You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
Welcome back to another episode of Recovered Life. I am here with life and recovery strategist, George Snyder.
Hey, Damon. Good to see you.
How you doing, George?
Very well, thank you.
Always good to sit and chat with you. And I know everybody's feeling it. I'm feeling it. With all of the life changing, I know that I start to resist. Oh no, change is coming. Time to resist. So I want to talk with you today about resisting change, some tips that you might have, and really the whole topic, because I think everybody in the world is going through changes, maybe more rapidly than in the past. What are your tips for resisting change?
I think it's important to really, thank you, Damon. And I think it's important to look at why I'm resisting, why I'm so defensive. And again, I think it goes back to the things we've talked about in the past, that fear, because I've invested in a way of doing things. So I have pride, I've got some pride invested in, well, this is how it's always been done. And it's my way, mine, my being possessive. And so now you're taking it away from me. Woo. Suddenly I've created something that is very natural. Everything always changes, right? Not the one constant we have is everything changes, but I've turned it into you're taking something away from me. And then I set up a confrontation. Not helpful.
Well, I did a little bit of thinking about this because I knew we were going to have the show. And through meditation, I've been doing a lot of meditation lately. Mm-hmm. And there are things that have been changing so rapidly in my life. And I know yours and other people's with COVID and with working at home and, kids being schooled at home and, the world just changing so rapidly. For me, it gives me fear. It's like, I'm going to lose, right? I'm going to lose some sort of advantage that I've worked hard for. And what kind of hit me in this meditation I had was, when have I been any less by losing? Yeah. I've always, for some reason, anytime I thought that I've lost necessarily, it's always been a gain for me in the long run.
Well, it's setting up that antagonistic dynamic that doesn't serve us. And that notion that the world is not a safe place, that someone's out to get it. A lot of these old ideas we acquired, frankly, sometimes so early that we didn't even have the language to say, wow, I'm not sure that's necessarily true, but as babies, we are just sponges, taking it all in, absorbing all this, and then getting these ideas that suddenly it's a hostile place. I got to hang on and I've got to fight. But change is inevitable. It's all going to change, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, I was confused in early recovery. I thought that choice was resistance. It's not. Sometimes you have a choice. You can go down path A, path B, path C, right? But resistance, what I found is, it's resistance when it's clear what path you're going to go down, right? And you're creating an energy out of fighting the natural flow of life, right? And that energy of resistance starts creating things in your life that you definitely don't want.
Right. Damon, and as you know, sometimes it's like, for what? I mean, why is it so important? Somebody would say to me, why is it so important to hold on to this? What's the buzz? What's the buzz you're getting off this? Let it go. Why is surrender such a difficult thing? But when you're raised in a world where people say to surrender is to lose, somebody said you let go and consider your options. I'm like, well, you have no options if you let go. You have no options if you give up. And they said, ooh, well, you've got a lot to learn.
Yeah. And and I find giving up is sometimes the correct path to doing things, and I'm all for what, and me and people that know me is that I could be a real go-getter. And, but what I've realized is that sometimes letting go of that expectation and stop resisting, especially who other people are. I would always try to like resist who they are, make them wrong, or try to change them. Being free of not being able to do any of that. I don't have to do any of that. I can just let them be who they are. Yeah. And what will happen will happen. And just focus on what do I need to do in this moment. Yeah. Has been a huge gift in my life.
Yeah. And to be able to, thank you, to be able to just say, instead of defending my decisions, my choices, my ideas, but being open to be willing to let them go, to change. Yes. When I can get out, but I can be, again, that whole, I'm attached to this. I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to do it. If it kills me, I'm going to do it. Why? Wow. How about, I really like the idea of doing this, but I've sort of changed maybe I don't like it so much anymore. Change your mind. You can change your mind. What a beauty.
Exactly. And you know what? It's funny because we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago that, I just experienced something where I just had a loss. I lost something, and I had forgotten that I had really kind of made a decision a while ago that I no longer wanted this thing. And I was asking for it to be removed. Then it's removed. I start to feel loss, and I go, wait a second, this is going to change, but really I didn't even want the thing that I was losing, but I'm resisting almost out of a habit or an impulse.
Yeah. It's an attachment. I'm attached to things I don't need to be attached to. If I can get out of, and I think a lot of us are currently this confrontational world that we're in, instead of just saying, I really like that idea. I really liked what I was doing, but I'm maybe not like it so much anymore. Then we're going to have an argument. I'm not going to argue with you. If a guy says, I really like doing this. I really like going to this place or doing that, then we're not going to be in an argument. What's the argument? But I start attaching to that. I start attaching to the way things should be. And then I get confrontational. Do
you feel too that, like, I spoke before about choice and resistance. Sometimes in early recovery, that is blurry. In 12-step groups, they talk about God doing for you what you can't do for yourself. And, I firmly believe sometimes I have to kind of look at my motives, because sometimes things in life will drastically and quickly change. And excuse me. And honestly, it was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I maybe wasn't in a position where I could say, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Or I don't want to be associated with this anymore. But all of a sudden, I'm almost swept up in the wave of it, and it's gone, and I'm free from it. But yet I'm still feeling that loss of like, wait, I should have resisted more for something that doesn't work for me.
It's something that no longer works. I had for years in this town in LA where I had a stick shift truck. I love that truck. It was time to move on. I'm going up and down the hills all the time, and a stick is it. But I didn't want to give it up. Why? I mean, I look back now and think it was a lot of work. But again, that notion of I learned how to drive a stick, and I'm going to drive a stick, and it doesn't matter, and I don't care. I didn't even like driving a stick. Yeah. But resisting because it was familiar, because it was mine, and that attachment, and realizing I'm fighting for it, terrified that if you took it away, then what?
Yeah. Well, you see this. You see this in 12-step groups a lot, where people will come in and they'll have what I call like a mini transformation. They'll quit drinking. They'll quit using drugs. They'll even quit doing certain things in their life that was hurting them. Maybe it was diet or where they lived or, personal health things. And then there's the whole future that's right ahead of them, and they'll stop and they'll freeze and they'll hold a line, even though, and I've seen this experience, even though it's been proven to me, for example, time and time again, that, change sometimes it's not only inevitable, it's a good thing. Yeah. We'll still draw a demarcation line in the sand. And I see a lot of people do this. They draw this demarcation line in the sand and they say, no more change for me. And you start to see a retrograde from them, and their life gets worse and worse and worse and not better and better and better.
No. Well, as it goes back to, and we could talk at some other time too about this whole I can't or I won't.
Yeah.
That I won't. And I remember saying to somebody, I'm not going to do that. And he said, can't, or because you aren't really interested, which is fine, or can't because you're afraid you can't. And that underneath that fear that if I let you know, and so I don't do that. I don't do that. Well, why not? Because I'm afraid you'll find out that I don't know how to do that well enough, or that I'm not an expert at it.
The people that when I first came in that were, they'd been sober 30, 40 years, 20 years, long periods of time, would call people will nots. People that will not do it. It's just they can't do it. They just will not do it, right? And somebody said, I just can't get a job. And I remember this other guy saying, no, you will not get a job. That's different than can't get a job. You can get a job. You just will not get one. Right. And understand that is that drawing of the line in the sand of like, no, I know I could change. And I know that this change is coming is probably the best for me. It's the highest good, but I refuse because I don't want to be uncomfortable.
I've never done it that way.
Exactly.
Before. How about trying?
Exactly. What are the steps, George, that you would tell one of your clients? Let's say somebody comes from you and they're just petrified. They just do not want to change at all. And they see it. What would you tell them as from some of the first things to do to start getting comfortable with change?
Well, I think we break it. I think you suggested it already. Break it down into pieces. Well, is it this? Is it you don't want to learn to dance? Okay, you just aren't interested, or are you afraid that they'll make fun of you if you can't because you can't dance, or nobody will want to dance with you? Trying to take it apart in pieces. I think part of it because some of us come in with extreme fear, extreme anxiety, and you can't tackle that in a single one fell swoop, as we say. Yes, but you can begin to take it apart. Well, can we do this? What about this part? What about that? And begin to tease it apart. I think so much of us would come in, the tasks seem insurmountable. Well, what's the next right thing to do? Well, how about we do this? Take it in pieces.
I like that. Break this down into bite-sized chunks.
Right.
That you can start applying. And I would even add to that, George, of make yourself accountable for those bite-sized chunks, right? Write them down like I do, whether it's 3x5 cards or what have you, carry them around and start to kind of unravel that bite by bite.
Right. And if we can, well, as we've talked about before, bookend it. Can you do this? Can you make a phone call? Can you check on that? And then let me know you did it. And piece by piece by piece.
Another thing too is we had we did a great series with Pastor Kevin Kline about when things fall apart. And, one of the things that I learned about change too was labeling all change good or bad. About what a disadvantage you're in when you say this change is good, this change is bad, and when you really don't know whether the change is good or bad.
No idea. And what's the value of making it a negative or a positive? What's the purpose of that? Again, we look a little bit underneath. It's an excuse. It's an excuse not to deal with that. Well, is there a piece of it we could deal with? How about that?
Yeah, this great episode, George. This was packed full, really good, of a lot of really good tips that I think people could use in early sobriety and in later sobriety.
Yeah. There's so many. Always interesting talking to you.
It is. It really is great. Thank you so much, George. Another episode of Recovered Life. Please join us online and continue this conversation. Yes. We're going to put a poll up here about change. Are you comfortable with rapid change? Do you like it? What's your problems with it? Go on, log on now and vote. We want to see your vote and your comments.
Here at Recovered Life.
Talk to you soon, George. Thanks.
Thanks, Damon.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.